Episode 18. I was talking to a muted screen, but it's the best day of our lives here in Colorado and Winnepegosis. And today, just a lot of things have been going on in the last couple weeks, and I think we could kind of summarize it around just perspective. We've had some things that have come towards us that have shown how dramatic perspectives can change someone's actions to life circumstances, and then how our perspectives can influence the things that we're in.
It's interesting coming up on Thanksgiving too, and we didn't even really intentionally plan this. It's just been a topic that we've been wrestling with a little bit, and yeah, it's going to be neat because we've noticed a change this week just as we started praying about it and looking for new direction and new vision for Never Settle. We kind of stumbled on not the question we were answering, but the answer that we needed, and it was this perspective topic, and just had a major shift, and it's already changed a lot of stuff in how we approach our day and our work. And I know for me personally, it's made a huge difference in just how I feel throughout the day about what I'm working on. Nothing's changed in terms of the what, it's just all about the why, and that's made a huge difference.
Yeah. Do one of you guys want to talk about like why we were searching? You just said a kind of a catchphrase. You said it wasn't the answer we were looking for, but the answer we needed. What were we looking like? Why were we in that place?
Yeah, we kind of got to this place because we, a few things. It's how you can go through life and you don't realize you're in a mode until it kind of builds up to a certain level. And so I think we realized, we need something unifying, either a single project or a single approach, a single thing to go after together as a team, because we were feeling stretched thin. And I think it just reached sort of a breaking point where we were doing a lot of things, but we were losing a sense of direction and purpose. Like, we knew the things that we were doing were good, but there wasn't that. It was starting to feel like we were getting stretched too thin, and so that kind of led us to.
Yeah, I mean, we were just kind of, we just finished our 12 products and 12-week thing, and we were trying to figure out, hey, what's next? But all of us, we had this like overarching feeling of like something's not right or whatever, and we didn't know, and like it's
My
like our
house
work.
might be burning down. Sorry. Can you guys hear that?
Yeah, maybe you should check
My
that
stuff.
out. But yeah, we were like, what are we going to do next? We know that just things are not feeling right, and we need to. We kind of went in this thing like, let's talk to Father. Let's start praying about it. And we went in kind of with this attitude of, what are we supposed to do next? What's our next project? Do we take all the products that we just made and like do this marketing thing? Do we, and we went into this prayer time, and we've been doing it for a couple days, and like even the very first day, we got back, instead of like, hey, you should do this or that, we got back, hey, you're not content in like all the cool things that I've been doing for you for 2 years. And we like backed up, looked at, hey, on day one of Never Settle, what was different? Like, the work hasn't really changed that much. Why do we feel different? And Father just convicted us, and he's like, it's because you're not, your perspective isn't right. Like, you aren't content, and we have a lot of reasons to be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think one of the really cool things in this is how quickly God moves, and we've talked about this in other things. We've used examples in our lives when we lay something at the altar, how quickly God can show up and radically disrupt our situation when we really present it to Him. So when we finally make the leap of faith, how quickly He is to show up. And this is just a great example of a time when, instead of making a leap of faith, we had to repent. We'd actually given up our joy without fighting. We'd actually taken things that Father had given us that were blessings and made them not curses, but just problems in our lives, like things that He'd given us.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, they were assets, and then we were looking at them as liabilities, and it was very much a poverty mindset. And He's giving us these things, and we're complaining about them internally, not necessarily vocally, but so we had to repent. And what was so cool is we got to do that together as a team on Monday, and then Tuesday, we showed up to work with this entirely new perspective, buying back into seeing the blessings that Yahweh's given us and being grateful for it all. And literally all three of us had a different story, but the same overarching story was like work was awesome again, and it was and just everything changed.
Mm-hmm. Dude, and
Yeah.
it, yeah, and it's like it's interesting like what happens when you involve Father in something, and he's like just waiting for it. And like Ken was actually telling me a story yesterday, which was awesome, about like he had gone up to a meeting, he had was backing out with his car like in something, and like went too far and kind of off this edge thing, and he's like, I don't know how I didn't make it like go down this hill, into a little creek or whatever, but like I didn't. And like later he's like thinking about it, and he's like it felt like just like Father was like there holding the car just waiting for me to involve him. And as soon as like he stepped back and prayed about it and like was like, I really need your help, like I don't know how to get this out, like the car just came out, and it's just like it's interesting, like that's like a small like um siloed thing, but like yeah, even when we did that same thing, it was like what's going on, like Father help us. And he's like, well, you're being dorks like about like all these blessings. And yeah, like I think pride was creeping in, I think entitlement was creeping in.
I think a big eye opener too is just um, how hard it is for us to involve him in the little things, the daily things, and we get into a mode and we're cruising and we've got our routine, and that's when we forget to involve him. It's so easy to get into to slide into those mentalities and mindsets. I know, just thinking about some of the concrete examples, to sort of put a real tangible face on this, things that I would do throughout my day, I would either be overwhelmed or just frustrated that I had to do something, right? But when I stepped back after we prayed and looked at the big picture perspective, it's like the only reason I have to do this is because of this blessing in my life. I mean, I'm working at a job that I love with people that I love, doing things that I love, and yeah, there's ups and downs. You've got to take the good with the bad, and I'd rather program 40 hours a week, and that's not reality, but the reality is, like, the things that I was thinking of as tedious were really a blessing. And so getting back to that place of enjoying, and Ken kind of alluded to it, but we stopped fighting for that joy, I think, in a lot of areas. And it wasn't a dramatic, we're not all grumpy all of a sudden and stressed out and miserable. We weren't miserable, but I think it was mediocre, right? It was less than passionate. And so it's just neat to see Father rekindling, again, answering our prayer in a way that we did not expect. We thought we would, and I think this is a big lesson for us too, and something that we can share with others is the lesson is we were hoping to find something to rekindle the passion, and what Father showed us was the passion should always be there no matter what we're chasing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really the big thing for me that I'm taking away from this, and I think part of that's painting a little bit of perspective. Like, things are probably the hardest they've ever been at the company level that we've had, regarding like how you would normally regard stress, whatever, like financials, future runway, type of work that you're doing, all that stuff. Like, to be very honest, we're in this place that we've never been in before, and it is the most challenging place we've been in, and so I think that helps, and that the feelings that we were getting were a result of the challenges we were going through. But like you said, the solution to that to those feelings and just our perspective and all that was not getting something new. It wasn't the next place. It was something that had to change within us. And I don't know the verse exactly, but Paul talks about it, right? He talks about being content in all things. And so when he has these places of huge joy and celebration, he's content. But when he has these places of huge suffering and persecution, he also finds contentment. And I feel like we're getting to experience this where we're in a challenging season, and Father was able to show us these lies we've bought into. We were able to repent, and because of that, the situation hasn't changed. Like, we're still have the same challenges we had before we started this, but everything is better.
Yeah, and I think that verse is it's one we were talking about earlier. It's Philippians 4:12. It's Scriptures doesn't use the word content, but lots of versions do. And it's, I know it is to be humbled. I know what it is to have an excess. In any and every situation, I've learned both to be filled, that would be content in other versions, and to be hungry, both to have in excess and to be in need. I think that's the verse you're talking about.
Yep.
Cool. We had a really interesting. We're still debating whether it was from a real person or just a person who was pretending to have an extreme take on things. But we got this email about Asana, one of our products, and it ties into this whole topic of contentment. And originally we thought about doing a whole podcast just about this email, and it kind of fits into it fits a little bit tighter into this bigger topic of perspective. But it was super interesting, and it shows sort of the extreme, one of the extremes that can come out of just having a twisted perspective.
Yeah, I feel like we could segment this into two things. What we were just talking about is the fruit of great perspectives and what it does, and we saw how it immediately influenced our situation right away. And then, yeah, here's an unhealthy perspective, or I would say we view this as unhealthy perspective, but it is just perspective, and that's why that we received the message that we did. So maybe I'll just read it really quick, and we'll keep it anonymous. But so a little bit of background. So one of the other things that we do at Never Settle is we also have this soap company that does a natural mosquito repellent soap, and we donate. We match people's orders, and we donate to countries that are suffering from malaria and mosquito-borne illnesses. And we have an open forum on the site, and people can send us messages and stuff. And so this person sent us a message, and the message says, I do not think that it's fair that I have to pay to send soap to other countries that do nothing good for the planet except overbreed. I would just like to pay for my soap, not everyone else's. For that reason, I will not be ordering. As your business plan is making it affordable for us. As your business plan is making it unaffordable for us. So sad. I think the person meant unaffordable, but anyways, that quick message, and we talked a lot about it. Actually, I'll just read the message, and I'll let you guys be the first to respond.
Yeah, so my first thought was, this is just a troll who wanted to get a rise out of us, because I had a hard time believing that an actual human being could think that way. But I'm assuming there are people out there, and you see it a lot. I mean, you don't have to spend very long in YouTube comments or comments on news articles or whatever to see how skewed a lot of people's perspective is, and it's not, I mean, we all make decisions, and yes, we are responsible for our words and our actions. I think there's a lot feeding into this, a lot of things that have a responsibility in the final perspective. But it'd be interesting to just, okay, let's assume this is a real person with and that's their actual perspective, and kind of explore that a little bit, because it's humorous and it's really, really sad at the same time.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, when I read it, I immediately thought it was spam, but like I was like, yeah, this can't be a real person. But yeah, I mean, I was instantly like angry at first. I was like, what a tool, like, and yeah, it blows my mind that there are actually people who think like that. And I'm sure like I'm in the wrong in some of my thinking of some stuff, but like that seemed like really extreme, and just, yeah, it is a bummer. And like what gets you there,
Mm-hmm.
And again, and at the most surface level of the perspective, so some of the facts were completely wrong, and so it's amazing too how our perspective can hinge on inaccurate facts. And so the perspective that that individual articulated was that they were paying more for something in order for us to provide free soap to others, and that's not true. We actually we eat the cost to make those donations for the soap that's purchased. So that was one fact that was inaccurate and maybe impacted the perspective. But let's say it was the other way around. Let's say, yes, we jack up our prices so that we can help others in need who can't afford it. We have so much excess in America, in North America. I mean, it's ridiculous. And to think that, I mean, if you just took box office numbers from one weekend and you think about what we could do with that amount of resources in an area of the world, it should be shameful. Like it really should be shameful.
I think I like what you said. It's their perspective was based on false information, which reminds me of the enemy, right? Like he tells lies. Lies cause damage when we believe them. So someone telling, it's when someone buys onto that artificial truth that it causes damage. So the price was one of them, but what got me more was the belief that one, number one, the person clearly doesn't know which countries we're sending this to, but there could be a bias that some of them. There's definitely a point of view that I would consider ignorance, that people view certain countries as just over, they just overpopulate themselves. But that right there was a false truth. So they said the only good that these countries do that we're sending it to is just overpopulate. And
can I interrupt you super quick there too?
Yeah.
Because that's another perspective that drives me crazy. And I mean the idea that overbreeding is even an idea is insane to me, because we are designed by our Creator to reproduce and to raise up generations that are bigger, better, stronger, and more effective than we are. And the original, I mean, the very, very, very first command in the scriptures is multiply the earth and subdue it. And
Andrew took it literal.
Hey, not as literal as like the Duggars and some of those other radical, awesome people that we admire so much. But yeah, so just
I agree. Yeah, I do agree with that, and I actually think a lot of it's fear-based. Another tactic of the enemy, right? We're afraid we're going to consume too many resources. We're not being responsible. It all comes from this mindset of hey, we want to be responsible. When you look at it, if we were actually raising up better generations of people, they would actually be more responsible with resources, and they could actually create healing on the earth and our resources than destruction. It's like,
yeah. What if we had like five? What if we had five Albert Einsteins?
What's that?
What if we had five, or what if we had 15 Albert Einsteins, right? Like, I mean, those kind of
population. More people don't necessarily destroy the planet if the percentage of bad people that are being bad stewards of the resources, that's what causes problems. Anyways, not to get too far off of that, I agree with that. Maybe that we should make that another podcast. But it was just, again, it was based on a false truth. They believe that the only good thing that these countries are doing is overpopulating. And one, they're not overpopulating. And two, those countries do so much, and it just shows how little that person may understand on global economies or whatever. But I would put a lot of money down saying that majority of the food that's on their table every day is coming from these countries. And so to say that is all they do is just a misunderstanding on them. And like you said, that's what creates some of this false perspective. Starts with a false truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just recently watched a video that gave me a whole new appreciation for the power of perspective, and it was a neat illustration. It's from marriagetoday.com, and it was actually a video about how we internalize hurt and pain and things, and then that manifests in our lives in other ways. But it was getting at a core principle. When Adam and Hava sinned, Adam and Eve, Adam and Hava, they were hiding, and Yahweh's walking through the garden looking for them, and he says, "Where are you? What are you doing?" And Adam says, "We were hiding, because we were naked." And this idea, that the enemy can twist something that Yahweh made and designed, and twist the perspective about that thing. Yahweh made them naked. That was good. Like, that was an incredible thing. There was no shame there in the perfection of creation. And then through sin, the enemy was able to twist their perspective to now be ashamed of what Yahweh had made, and ashamed of their nakedness. And so it's a really sobering thought that we have to be so careful. And we found, we related to to that same kind of thing in our thinking. We were taking things that Yahweh had given us, and the enemy was just subtly lying to us and twisting our perspective that those were hassles, and yet when we got the reset, it's like, wow, these are good things. They're not hassles at all.
Yeah, a little bit more of the story how it plays out. So we received this email. We started having conversations about it. How do we address this? We were kind of sharing. Some of us had some bad perspectives on it. We had initially a bad response, very judgmental response, I would say, in the words we were using and the frustration it was bringing out of us. And ultimately, we decided we want to respond to this person, but can we do so in a way that doesn't give in on the issues that they're saying, but is a way to speak truth in a loving way about some of this stuff. And so Andrew and Shaw gave me the green light to go ahead and respond to this person. And while I was going through the exercise of thinking, like, how do I do this, it just happened that my daily devotional was going through Matthew 7. And Matthew 7:2 says, "For in the same way that you judge others, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured to you." And it was just, super convicting, and just very much made us realize, and I was able to share it with the guys, and just a huge perspective for us, like, it doesn't even matter, like there's so many things I fall short on, so many things I have bad perspective on. Like, if I'm going to judge that, I think in another translation, or maybe right after that, somewhere it says you're without excuse. Like when you come to the judgment table, you'll be without excuse because you're the one that's passing judgment on. So if I'm sitting here and I'm going to vocalize and say that someone's wrong in this, when I make that mistake, or any mistake really, because I'm willing to pass judgment, there's zero excuse because I've now deemed the judging others as an okay thing to do. And so that was a really great perspective change, and something that I think really allowed us to have a different view on this whole situation, and just like Andrew said, instead of frustration, just more like being kind of sad about it and torn up about, like, it's so sad that you could get to that place where you would believe something, a thought pattern that's that broken.
And I think the sadness and the frustration, like, it's easy to be angry at the person, but I think the real anger in my heart stems from a place of not having a way to help change that. Like, there's no there's no way to reach back to that person. We, like Ken said, we tried to respond and the email bounced, so it must have been a fake email address. But just running into that barrier of seeing something that's so shockingly different than our perspective on it, and not having a way to help influence that's the biggest frustration, I think.
We kept talking about maybe it's spam. You guys use the word fake. You're like, maybe it's fake, and I want to interject in that, because basically there's two options I see. One, somebody wrote it and they believed it, or two, someone wrote it and they don't think they believe it, but they had enough in them to either want to they wanted to create frustration or division, but it was still a real person that wrote that out, right?
Right.
And so whether they think they fully believe it or not, what would be going on in your mind to write something like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can't figure out what's going on in a lot of people's minds that write a ton of stuff out there, to be honest. But
it's just like I mean, it makes me think, surround yourself with, like, the people you're surrounded with, and the things that you put in your brain. Like, I mean, they really do have an impact, and there's a lot of negative forums and things like that on the internet, and places that there is a lot of talk like that. And some people might be kidding, but some people don't know, like, it's, they're kidding, and they absorb these thoughts and these I don't know, ideals and stuff, and then they, like, it might be slow, just like it was slow for us. Like, we were like, like, having such a good time when we started, then slowly, like, we were like feeling entitled to, whatever project or whatever thing, or say no to that because it's not what we do or whatever. And like that might probably crept in the same way, or like a parent's like that. And it's just like, I'm with you, Andrew, like, thinking about the surroundings of that person is very frustrating. You're like, oh, like, it's so much better than that. Like, and
Mm.
you're like trapped in this thing, and it's just not it is not good.
Yeah.
It can be way better than what you're living, you know?
Yeah, surrounding yourself. Yeah, the thing that happens, right, is group think. So you want to
Hmm.
be in group think where it's a positive thing. And even this morning, I was having a conversation with um, my father-in-law, and we were just talking about manipulation and the power of it. And how do people become suicide bombers? How do people get stuck in modern day slavery, even sex slavery? And I'll give a shameless shout out to I Empathize and Be Relentless, because what those guys are doing on that front is just incredible. But back to the topic, how does someone stay in it? So even adults stay in modern day slavery, even though they have no chains, they have no physical boundaries holding them in, but it's manipulation, right? And the manipulation's so strong. Same with like the child army in Africa. Um, and so that's that group, like I see group think, and then I see manipulation being really powerful spiritual factors, right? These are things that we can't see but have huge influence over us. And yeah, why it's so important to have that community, have people that are speaking light into those places, and to avoid that group think, which is why I'm feeling, yeah, it's great to challenge everything that we have, test and approve everything by the word, because even great people, like you said, Shaw, like some people, one, they might be joking and it causes problems because other people believe them, or two, some people might be doing things with good intentions, but it's still um, maybe false truths and someone's believing that, and it's causing destruction in their life. Anyways,
Yeah.
slightly getting off topic. I guess for me, I was just kind of thinking about all this together, and the power of perspective, and where we had a poor perspective in a bad situation, and how it's radically been disrupted by having a great perspective in that same bad situation. And then also looking at the damage that can cause just from an external, something that was brought to us, someone else's perspective. And um, it's really simple to talk about, and it's an easy concept to understand, but living it out really has dramatic impact on the things around us.
Yep. And I think the biggest key is to constantly be um, looking at and evaluating ourselves. What how like where like doing a constant spiritual health assessment and saying, okay, where am I leaving Father out of the picture, and how can I pull him back into the picture? And I think to kind of put a put a capstone on all of that, another great example of perspective, as well as kind of connecting the dots between the things you were talking about, Ken, that yeah, we are responsible for the way that we view others, and if we're holding a standard, whether it's inflated or not, we're going to be held to that standard. And of course, the familiar verse, deal with the plank in your own eye before you try to help your brother with a splinter in his. But the principle of eye for eye, tooth for tooth, right? And the perspective on that's interesting, because most people, and in fact I think, usually you think that's a revenge thing, like whoever does something, then the same thing has to be done to them. But if you go back and look at that context, that's not what it is. The eye for the eye and the tooth for the tooth, that was about when someone brought an accusation against someone else and it was wrong. And so the person who said, this person should have this punishment, if that was a false accusation, then that punishment would be done to the accuser. And so
Mhm.
it's really interesting to see how that shifts the entire thing. And so even in our own lives, as we've got to be so careful, and it's easy to not um, double check or guard our perspective, because it's so easy to just take those environmental factors and the influence around us and kind of just go along with it, and without even realizing it, then we sort of adopt these perspectives. But realizing that yes, like, life is better, we can do more, we can help more, and can we be a source of life, encouragement, hope. And that's really, I think, hope. When we read that email, there is no hope in that email at all.
Mm.
It's just this bleak perspective that the world's overpopulated and I'm put out because I have to pay more for my soap because I don't want to help those who need. And that's just, there's no hope there. And I think the world is really parched for hope. And it's one of the amazing things that I love about Light Gives Heat and all the amazing work that they're doing in that arena. It's that we really need to be sources of hope in the world.
Mm.
perspective.
That's good, man.
Yeah, I have nothing to add to that.
Maybe a good place to wrap then.
Yep, sounds good.
All right, till next time.